Hi, my name is Birna van Riemsdijk and I'm Associate Professor Intimate Computing at the University of Twente. In this video, I'd like to take you along in my process for setting yearly goals. If you're a busy faculty member like me, it means you have to juggle a lot of different tasks. And just thinking about planning your year can already feel so overwhelming that we just continue what we're doing. I'll show you how you can obtain an overview of the various different tasks that you might have to do during the year. And this can already give you some peace of mind that you're not forgetting very important tasks. Furthermore, it helps you to do a reality check of whether everything that you have in mind and that you'd like to do is actually realistic. This can help you make choices already up front, which takes away a lot of the stress of the continuous decision making throughout the year. And finally, I'll show you how you can create focus by identifying what your main goals are among all of those tasks that you want to do. This can be very motivating and stimulating because it gives you really a guidepost for what you're working towards. But before we continue, I need to make a disclaimer because I think no planning method can compensate if your workload is structurally too high. And addressing that really requires systemic changes in academia, which I hope we'll start to see very soon. With that said, let's get into the video. The first step is to brainstorm all of the different tasks that you're planning to do throughout the year. The way I do that is that I have 5 main categories where I list my tasks. These are research, education, community, dissemination, and a miscellaneous category. So under research, I write things like supervising PhDs, but also writing proposals. For education, this could be teaching classes or also supervising bachelor and master students. Community initiatives like network, supervisory board, and these kind of things. And a miscellaneous category for other things like email or personal development. The next step is to estimate how many hours you think you would need for each of these tasks. I didn't film this part of the process, so I'll briefly show you the end result, but here I'll show you how I write down the final calculations in my bullet journal. So what I start with is first to calculate the total amount of available hours that I'll have for the entire year. So I'd recommend as a baseline to use the hours that you're actually paid to work. So don't plan for doing overwork and of course also exclude the holidays. And then I make a first estimate of the hours per task. Now, if you're not used to tracking your hours, this can be quite hard. So just try making maybe your best guess. Think about how many hours per week you use for recurring tasks like supervision. And also start with tasks that are mandatory and that are somewhat easier to assess. So as a level of granularity, I would recommend to have tasks of at least 10 hours. So if they're smaller than that, I would combine them into a single task. Usually for most of my tasks, I have between 30 and 100 hours. Some are bigger. For example, if I have to make a new course, then it could be more hours than that. In this process, you might also merge or split tasks as needed, and you might group some smaller tasks that you don't want to list separately. And then I do a reality check. So what I do is I calculate the total amount of hours for each of the main categories, so research, education, etc. And then for the total amount of hours I have calculated, then I add another 10% for miscellaneous tasks. For me, the 10% works quite well. For you, that might be a bit different, but if you don't know, then maybe 10% is a good starting point. After adding these 10% of extra hours to your total amount of hours, what you want to do is to check 2 things. So first of all, you want to check whether the amount of hours you then have, so your total amount of planned hours, is within your total available hours. And second of all, you might be interested to check the percentage for each of the main categories of tasks to see if this is somewhat balanced and in line with what you want to do. So for example, you might want to do a similar amount of research and teaching. So this is a good way to double check if that is roughly going that direction. If you're like me, then you might notice that you have planned more hours than you actually have available. This might feel a bit overwhelming as you don't yet know how to fit everything in, but there are a number of things that you can take a look at. So first of all, you can see if there are some tasks where you can reduce the amount of hours that you've scheduled for that task. That is especially useful for tasks where you can adapt the amount of work that you can take on. So for example, for reviewing tasks or tasks where you can play a bit with the level of ambition that you have. For example, if you're setting up a network or other initiatives that you're starting, you might postpone certain things a bit. Second, you might conclude that there are certain tasks that you're just not going to do this year. So this might be the case, for example, for a proposal that you really wanted to write, which might actually not really be necessary to do this year. This may also be something that you want to discuss with your manager. And finally, since of course these hours are just an estimation, it can be useful to think upfront if there are tasks where, if needed, you could potentially reduce the number of hours. So you leave them in the schedule, but you already think upfront, if there are tasks which turn out to be more time consuming than you had planned, then there are other tasks which you could potentially reduce a bit. And then we go to the third and final step of this process, which is to identify your focus by setting your main goals for this year. A main goal can be one of the tasks that you already have on the list that is, for example, a really important task. You can also identify a set of tasks that together form, let's say, a coherent whole. And you might also see some patterns that, for example, you want to focus on certain skills which you have to use throughout a number of different tasks. So, for example, you want to focus on developing a certain leadership skill which you can employ in different committees or project leadership, etc. For me, setting such main goals really keeps me motivated throughout the year. It makes me feel much more sense of purpose. Like if I'm working on some very small tasks, I know which bigger goal they belong to. And they also help me to decide whether to say yes or no to certain new tasks that come along. What I also do is a mid-year review where I see if I'm on track with what I have in mind, what I wanted to do for that year. And there also the main goals are a main focus point of reflecting about how it's going and if I need to make any adaptations in what I'm doing. You might wonder why I define the main goals as the last step of this process. You might also try it the other way around. For me, I find it easier to do that kind of in a bottom-up way. So where I first have an overview of all of the tasks, I find it usually a bit easier to list them. And then I have a look at them and I try to identify what are the main patterns and which are really the essential things I want to focus on. So in summary, my planning process for setting goals for the year consists of the first brainstorming tasks, then estimating the hours for these tasks and revising where needed, and then setting the main goals for the year. I hope this video inspired you to start planning your own year and that it will help you achieve your goals and your purpose. Thanks so much for watching. Let me know in the comments how you plan your year and if you want to see more videos like this. Bye!